Hi, this is a deep dive on how to use Cradle Certification as a tool to measure your current sustainability and set priorities for improvement. To do the real certification, you have to work with the Cradle Products Innovation Institute, of course. But even if you don't get certified, you can still use it as a scorecard for what you're doing well and for what needs improvement the most. This may give you different priorities than LCA would, but that's partly the point. It depends on your values and context. And when Cradle and LCA agree on a priority, you should definitely do that. In this video, we won't go into detail on every single point in the certification, but we'll do enough for you to get the idea. And some of the points relate to your product, others to your company operations. We'll look at both, and you'll see how the process works. So if you start off on the VentureWell website, if you go to Measuring Sustainability and Cradle to Cradle Exercise, the text here gives you a step-by-step list of what to do and estimates of how long it'll take. But the really useful thing that you want here is the template spreadsheet. So you download that and you open it up in Excel, and it gives you a list of all the Cradle to Cradle certification points. So there's the different categories of material health and material reutilization and energy and water and social responsibility. And each row here is a different certification point, and each column is what certification level requires that point. So these first 2 points here are required for every level of certification: basic certification, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. But some of the later ones, like this one here, is only required for gold and platinum certification. And then down below, there's a place for you to keep track of whether your product does meet certification standard or doesn't, and if so, what level of certification it might get, from basic certification all the way up to platinum. And this template also has a place for you to list your conclusions on what you're doing well and what needs fixing, because again, if you're using this as a design tool, it's just as important what you're doing badly and need to fix as what you're doing well. And then on the right-hand side here, you'll see that there is a list of notes that you should make for all these different points, both for communicating your results to someone else and just as notes to yourself, so that several months later, you can still know what you were talking about and why you made the decisions that you did. And the last thing to see here is that there are 2 different columns for a pessimistic score and an optimistic score. And you'll see some things are in red text when your answers are uncertain. So in cases where you're certain that you didn't get the point, you just say no for both. And if you're certain that you did get the point, you can say yes for both. But if you're not sure whether you got the point or not, put a no in the pessimistic column and a yes in the optimistic column, and flag that as red so that it's easy for you to come back to. And because these are the things where you need to get the answers first, basically. So that's the basic structure of the spreadsheet. And now we can go through some of the individual points. So for the first point here, are all the material ingredients of your product identified down to 100 parts per million? Well, let's say that we're using the same refrigerator that we used in the LCA example. So here's a bill of materials of the refrigerator. We've got steel, iron, and it tells how many kilos and pounds, what percentage by mass everything is. And we look through this, but at the bottom it says other. Okay, so 8% of the mass of the refrigerator is not defined. So, okay, we don't know what that is. So yeah, the score that we get is no, both in the best case and worst case. And let's say 8% of product biomass is unknown. And we can, let's say, see the bill of materials in, and we can say what the name of this file is. All right, we can copy and paste that and just say, see the bill of materials in this file. Okay. So then the next point, all material ingredients defined as biological nutrient or technical nutrient. Well, we don't even know what all the materials are, so we definitely can't get this point in the worst case scenario. But if we think, yeah, probably everything is a technical nutrient, so we think everything is a technical nutrient, all metal and plastic. But yeah, but we're not sure. And who knows, maybe the spray foam or the polyurethane insulation is not able to be a nutrient for anything. So maybe not insulation. And now we're not going to be able to get this point until we solve the first point, but this can be a note to us that we think it would probably be okay. And does not contain any banned list substances. Again, we can say we think not, but check unknown substances, something like that. And so, etc. And then material assessments. Well, we haven't done material assessments on any of this stuff. And so we can just say no to everything. And cradle-cradle emission standards. So do any of our materials outgas volatile organic compounds or other potentially toxic chemicals? We can probably say no to this. So let's say no known off-gassing. But if we want to check, we could say, but test it, and then we could change this from a yes and a yes to a no and a yes, and say that this is uncertain. And then finally, all the process chemicals have been assessed and none have an X assessment. No, because we haven't done any health assessments. So that's basically it for material health. And the priority there is pretty much we really need to identify all the ingredients, because without that, we're not going to get any of these points. And that's why I don't recommend using Cradle Certification as a design guide for electronic products, because you're never going to be able to get that level of data. Just your supply chain is never going to give you that information. And so it's actually more productive for you to go with a certification that's tailored more appropriately to your product. So EPEAT certification is very good for computers, laptops, monitors, phones, tablets, etc. And you can go through that certification system just like we went through Cradle to Cradle here and check off the different points that you get and don't get and use them to determine your priorities. But back to Cradle, that's it for material health. And so then next one, material reutilization. So what is the material reutilization score? So this we have to go back and calculate the score, and it has it right here. It is the percent of materials that were recycled or rapidly renewably sourced materials, plus the percentage of stuff that is recyclable at the end of its life or compostable at the end of its life times 2, and then all that divided by 3. So if we go through the refrigerator here, we can add up, okay, how much of this steel was recycled? Well, this says primary steel, not secondary steel. Primary means it's virgin steel. So, so this is not recycled. The aluminum is not recycled. The copper is not recycled. Polystyrene, and we can probably assume that none of this stuff is recycled, and so that means that we get a score of 0 for sourcing. And so what's the percent recyclable or compostable? Well, the steel will be recyclable, and the aluminum will be recyclable, and the copper, and the iron. The rubber, probably not. Polystyrene, yeah, in theory recyclable, but nobody ever does it. Same with ABS and PVC. Polyurethane foam, not recyclable. Glass, recyclable. Refrigerant, that's probably not going to get recycled. But you never know. Actually, there is a good deal of infrastructure that does recover refrigerant gases from refrigerators. But it doesn't really matter because it's such a tiny percentage of the mass of the refrigerator. It's basically 0%. And so we can leave that out of this calculation. So, okay, so let's look at, so the steel is 56% plus 5% plus 3% plus 3%. Okay, so percent is 56 plus 5 plus 3 plus 3. Okay, so that's this, and this. The rubber was not. The polystyrene, we said all this stuff was not, but the glass is, so that's another 3%. And the other materials, we don't even know what that is, so we just have to assume that that's not recyclable at end of life. So, okay, so the score here, and we can, one of the nice things about having this be in Excel is that we just turn this into a formula here. So that was the percentage. Now, remember that you'll have to put parentheses around all this addition before the multiplication can happen, order of operations. But once you click that, then it calculates it for you. So we've got 46 point something, and we can say, all right, that is our material reutilization score. And that is the number for all 4 of these points here. So we can clear that and just, yeah, we can say that is for all of them. And so, okay, is it greater than or equal to 35? Yes, in fact, 46 is greater than 35. So we do get that point. But it is not quite 50, so we don't get that point or the other ones. And then for the next point, do we have a nutrient management strategy? Like, do we have a plan for taking back material, recovering material? Probably not, so we can say that. But maybe you can say that we're planning a strategy now. So let's say our building strategy now. And so maybe that could be a more up in the air thing where worst case it's no, but best case it is yes, because it might be done soon. And then is the product actively being recovered? Well, no, we don't already have a system. So yeah, we can say not currently being recovered. Yeah. So, okay, so that is basically it for the material reutilization. And so I'd say the top priority for the whole category of material reutilization is to increase the percentage of material that's sourced to be recycled material, that we're making the refrigerator out of recycled materials, and then also increase the amount that's recyclable at end of life. Okay, so then renewable energy. First question, and almost all of this stuff, this is not about the product itself. This is about the company operations mostly. So the first point is whether we as a company have quantified the amount of energy use and the sources of energy. And yeah, let's say have not quantified. So that's a no. And do we have a strategy for using renewable energy? Yeah, let's say that we have declared that by 2030, the company will run on 100% renewables. Okay, and hopefully that's true. And then next question, do we have 5% of electricity in the final manufacturing stage renewably sourced or offset with renewable energy credits? And do we have 5% of direct on-site emissions burning fuel for vehicles or heat? Do we have carbon offsets for that? And you need both of these to get this point, remember. So let's say no, we're just buying normal grid power today. And so if we don't get that point, then we're definitely not going to get the next 2 points because they're just higher percentages of the same thing. And then last one, embodied energy is quantified, the amount and the sources of embodied energy in the materials of our product. And do we have a strategy developed to optimize that? Well, maybe we're, again, putting together a strategy, but we haven't done it yet. So let's say developing strategy now. But again, that'll remain uncertain. Or maybe the answer is just no. Maybe we can say have not quantified, just like we did up there, and then boom, that'll be a no. And then the last one, 5% of embodied energy covered by offsets. So yeah, no offsets currently. So we're mostly striking out on this one, but as you can see, the first step here to progress would be just quantifying the energy sources that we have now, and you can't even get these later points until you get that point. So that is it for energy. And then for water, created or adopted water stewardship guidelines and principles. So let's say no, we haven't done. So we change that to a no. And as you can see, again, you need to do this to get any level of certification. So that's something that would need to be done. But if you haven't done it, you haven't done it. And you just have to list that as something on your to-do list. And again, this is a company operations thing, not a product thing. So if you're using the Cradle to Cradle as a design guide for your product, then you don't have to do anything about this yourself. You could just send notes to your operations people saying, hey, this is a thing that we would like to have, and how can we get someone on that? And then violated discharge permit. Yeah, hopefully that's true. You can check, you can say checked with factory manager and no violations. So yeah, maybe you can get that point. And et cetera, et cetera. You can go through here. Again, most of these things are operations, but some of them are directly relevant to the product and the manufacturing, such as the process chemicals. Are you using any process chemicals that are hazardous? And if so, is any of that getting into your effluent? And so let's say that's it for water, even though we haven't covered it entirely. And social responsibility, the first point here is to do a streamlined self-audit to assess your protection of human rights. And again, you don't need to go out to your factory to do this. You can look things up online. You can say that we looked at social hotspots database and verified all our supplier countries or all our factory countries are okay. So yeah, so you could say, yes, we got that point. And, but maybe you could say, but maybe you did the audit and it wasn't okay. And so maybe you looked at the social hotspots database and found 3 of our countries are okay, but 1 scores badly. So then your management procedure might be to say, hey, we talked to our manager, and manager planning to audit factory in country X and check working conditions. Okay, so then you could say yes to that. And again, and the next one is full social responsibility audit. And yeah, probably you say did not do. And performed material specific audit, etc. Yeah, probably you can say did not do. And etc. And again, most of these things are about operations, but they do still reflect on your product, because if you want to get fair trade certified, that is absolutely about your supply chain and your operations, even though it's the product that's getting certified. And then these 2 points, as you can see, are just combinations of previous ones for silver certification level. And then the last one is acceptable third-party certification. So did you actually get FSC certified or fair trade certified rather than just doing a self-audit? So you can go through there, and again, take notes all along the way. And here, based on the results above, we get to our final score. And unfortunately, we have to say no for everything, which is too bad, but that's how it goes. And so we can say for our final conclusions, yeah, the product does not meet all prerequisites. It's not eligible for any level of certification. But what were the things that were not met, that were easiest? What are the things that are our top priorities here? Well, we should characterize all the materials. So that was up here in material health, because we need to do this in order to get any of the rest of these points. So that's a very basic thing to do. So we need to do that. And maybe we say that the insulation was probably not a technical nutrient. So maybe we can say change insulation to a technical nutrient. Okay. And improve material reutilization score by sourcing recycled steel and plastic and glass. And if you remember from the bill of materials from our product, really just the steel alone is more than half the product. So just using recycled steel would already up our score a lot. And so that is a nice low-hanging fruit, high priority here. And then for energy, again, even just quantifying anything is necessary to get any of the rest of these points. So we can say quantify the energy use and sources. Okay. So we can keep going through this, and if we want, you can play the game where we're like, okay, if we did do this, then we would get this point. Then what other points would we also get automatically? Maybe we would automatically get the next 2 points here, and so suddenly we would be able to get basic certified in material health just by doing this one thing. It might cause us to get all 3 of these. And then for material reutilization, if we upped our score a bit, maybe, if we had a 50% score, we would get all the way to silver certification at 50%. And with energy, if we did quantify our energy use and found out that we're already using more than 5% renewable electricity, and then we decided to pay for some carbon offsets to get 5% on-site emissions, then boom, we suddenly go from not certifiable at all to silver level certification. And you can keep doing this, playing this game, and you can make a list of the things where if these criteria were met, we would be able to certify at, let's say, eligible for silver certification, let's say. And again, it doesn't matter whether that's actually going to happen right now. The goal is for you to use this as a design guide and a management operations guide to see what do you need to do to make things better. So that's basically it for Cradle to Cradle certification. If you're using it as a scorecard to set design priorities, it probably seems faster and easier than LCA, but I do warn you, it is hard to do the material health assessments and some of the water and social assessments. You'll probably need someone else in the company to do those. But if you're doing a quick assessment like we did here, yes, it's faster and easier. And even if you are limiting yourself to that fast and easy kind of assessment, just the product and just what you personally can do, you can see how Cradle to Cradle certification can help you set goals for improvement and measure your success when you get there. That's how certifications can also be design tools.